Sunday morning, October 19th, 1986, Lagos, Nigeria. The sun is already hot. A man is sitting in his study at number 25 Talabi Street, Ikeja. His name is Dele Giwa. He is 39 years old. He is Nigeria's most widely read editor. He co-founded the country's first news magazine 2 years ago. He has spent his entire career asking questions that powerful people do not want answered. And this morning, he is having breakfast with a colleague, Kayode Soyinka, his London bureau chief, who has flown in to visit. Around mid-morning, there's a knock. A guard receives a package from some unknown couriers outside the gate. The guard passes it to Billy, Dele's son. Billy carries it inside to his father. The parcel is padded, slightly larger than an A4 sheet, addressed to Chief Dele Giwa, though he was not a chief, marked with a simple instruction to be opened by the addressee only. And on the outside, clear as daylight, is the official coat of arms of the Nigerian presidency. Dele picks it up. He is not afraid. He looks at his colleague, Kayode Soyinka, smiles and says, and I am quoting the eyewitness here, "This must be from the president." He had been speaking with Babangida's office. He was expecting communication. He believed this was it. He held the package on his lap and began to open it. The explosion detonated in his lap. It blew apart his lower body. The force threw Kayode Soyinka, who had stepped away to the restroom just seconds before, clean off his chair. The study was destroyed. Dele was carried out by friends and rushed to First Foundation Hospital in Opebe. He died that afternoon. His last words, reported by those who were with him, were three: "They got me." That was October 19th, 1986. Today is 2026. No arrest has ever been made. No person has ever been charged. No trial has ever been held. And the man whose government seal was printed on that package, who has spent nearly 4 decades denying any involvement, only broke his silence in a book published in 2025. Welcome to the evidence room. We are opening this file today, and we are not closing it until every fact is on the table. Before we go into the politics and the bombs and the denials, you need to understand who Dele Giwa actually was, because this story does not work without understanding exactly what Nigeria lost on that Sunday morning. And I mean lost, not just a man, but a force. Sumonu Oladele Giwa was born in 1947 in Ile-Ife into a family that worked in the palace of the Oni of Ife. He grew up with nothing remarkable to distinguish him from millions of other Nigerian children, except the mind. He was sharp, he was curious, and he had a need to say true things out loud that never left him. In the 1970s, he traveled to the United States. He studied English at Brooklyn College in New York City. He enrolled in graduate school at Fordham University. And while studying, he worked as a news assistant at the New York Times, not a Nigerian paper, the New York Times. This is important. It tells you what kind of journalist he was going to be. He was not trained in the habits of soft reporting. He was trained in the institution that set the international standard for accountability journalism. He came home to Nigeria in 1979. He worked as a features editor at the Daily Times, then moved to Sunday Concord under Chief M.K.O. Abiola, and then in 1984, alongside Ray Ekpu, Dan Agbese, and Yakubu Mohammed, he co-founded Newswatch magazine, Nigeria's first weekly news magazine, modeled on Time and Newsweek, and specifically designed to ask the hard questions about Nigerian power that no other publication was willing to ask.
A 1989 review described Newswatch as having changed the format of print journalism in Nigeria and introduced bold, investigative formats to news reporting. The magazine was so impactful that within its first year, the new military government of General Ibrahim Babangida was putting his leader's face on the cover and praising his administration. And then, by 1986, the relationship had turned because Newswatch started reporting things the government did not want reported. Exchange rate policy, political purges, the removal of senior military figures, and a story of a mysterious young woman named Gloria Okan, a drug case that, according to multiple sources, would have implicated people at the very top of Babangida's inner circle. Dele Giwa was described by his colleague as a flaming journalist with a fiery message of rebuke, a man with a knack for packaging stories that injected sleeplessness and nightmares into the tyrants of his day. He was also known for a quote that has echoed through Nigerian public life for 4 decades since his death. He said, "Nigeria is on fire and the citizens are amused." That sentence was written in 1986. You can ask yourself how relevant it remains today. He was 39 years old when he died. He had 3 children. He was married. He was planning to expand Newswatch. He had dreams. The bomb ended all of it in one morning, and the people who sent it have never been held accountable. That is what we are here to examine.
All right, evidence room. Let us open the actual file. Everything I am about to read you is documented, not rumored, not speculated, documented in court records, first-hand testimonies, Human Rights Commission hearings, and internationally published press reports. I'm going to go through it chronologically because the timeline is the most damning thing in this entire case. Thursday, October 16th, 1986, 3 days before the bomb, Lieutenant Colonel A.K. Tagone, Deputy Director of the State Security Service, summons Dele Giwa to SSS headquarters. According to Giwa's lawyer, Chief Gani Fawahinmi, who later campaigned for justice in this case until his own death, Tagone accused Giwa of planning a socialist revolution in collaboration with university unions and student groups, smuggling arms into the country, and various other activities hostile to the Babangida administration. Giwa denied all of it. He left shaken. No charges were filed that day. It was an interrogation, a warning, or, depending on your perspective, the beginning of a countdown. Saturday, October 18th, 1986, 1 day before the bomb, Colonel Halilu Akilu, the Director of Military Intelligence, personally calls Giwa's home. He speaks to Giwa's wife, Fumi, and asks her for directions to the family's house. His stated reason, according to reports, was that he wanted to stop by on his way to Kano. He told her the ADC wanted to drop something off. Think about that. The Director of Military Intelligence calling the wife of Nigeria's most prominent journalist, asking for directions to their home the night before a bomb arrives at that same address. Sunday morning, October 19th, 1986, the day of the bomb. Akilu calls Giwa directly that morning. He tells him the matter from the SSS interrogation has been resolved. There is nothing to worry about. Everything is fine. Not long after that reassuring call, a package is delivered by unknown couriers to Giwa's gate. It bears the official Nigerian presidential coat of arms. According to the only eyewitness, Coyote Soyinka, the package had a label indicating it came from the office of the president. Giwa's son, Billy, receives it. Giwa opens it. The bomb explodes. Giwa dies. The couriers have never been identified.
Now here is where the investigation itself becomes part of the story. The government convened a press conference the very next morning before any proper investigation had been completed. They promised a judicial commission of inquiry. That commission was never established. Police investigated but reported no breakthrough. When President Obasanjo established the Human Rights Violations Investigation Commission, known as the Oputa Panel, in 1999, it summoned Babangida, his security chief Akilu, and Colonel Tagon to testify. All three declined. Babangida left the country to Saudi Arabia to avoid appearing, and the panel, which had no power to compel testimony, could only state in its final report, and I am quoting directly, that there was evidence to suggest that Babangida and the two security chiefs, Brigadier General Halilu Akilu and Colonel A.K. Tagon, are accountable for the death of Dele Giwa by letter bomb. The panel recommended reopening the case. Nothing happened. In February 2024, 38 years after the assassination, a federal high court in Abuja formally ordered the federal government to reopen the investigation into Giwa's death and strengthen protections for journalists. That order has been issued. As of today, no suspect has been named, no charges have been filed. The investigation, as far as the public can see, remains exactly where it was in 1986.
Let us talk about the suspects, because in nearly 4 decades of speculation, a number of names have emerged with varying degrees of evidence behind them, and it is important to distinguish between what is documented, what is alleged, and what is contested. Evidence room does not convict people without evidence, but we are going to lay every named theory on the table and let you decide. Theory 1, the Babangida government. This is the most widely held theory and the one supported by the Oputa panel's own findings. The documented chain of events in the 72 hours before Giwa's death involves 2 named senior intelligence officials reporting directly to Babangida's administration: Togan summoning Giwa and Akilu calling his wife for directions the night before the killing. The parcel bore the presidential coat of arms, and Babangida himself, the sitting military president, refused to testify before the Human Rights Commission that specifically named him. He left the country rather than appear. In his autobiography, published in 2025, he denied involvement and called the accusations cheap and foolish, arguing that no real assassination plot would advertise its own source. He described seeing Giwa's murder as part of booby traps designed to destabilize his administration. In other words, according to IBB, someone killed his friend Giwa in order to make IBB look guilty. That is his position, published 4 decades after the event, in a book he controlled entirely. Theory 2, Buba Marwa as the courier. This is where the story gets even more layered. In 2009, Professor Tayamiwo Ogunade gave a detailed interview to Sahara reporters, claiming that soldiers loyal to the executed General Maman Vatsa, who was killed by Babangida's regime after a disputed coup plot, had told him that Colonel Buba Marwa, a known loyalist of IBB and later military governor of Lagos, was the person who physically delivered the parcel bomb to Giwa's gate. According to this account, the bomb was prepared by Akilu and Togan, then handed to Marwa for delivery. The alleged reason Giwa was targeted: he had been given a tape recording of Vatsa's 4-hour testimony before the military tribunal, a testimony that allegedly contained explosive information about how the Babangida regime operated. Buba Marwa has denied any involvement. He has never been formally questioned or charged. Theory 3, the Gloria Okan angle. For years, the most popular theory in Nigeria centered on a woman named Gloria Okan, a young Nigerian who was arrested in Kano as an alleged drug courier and died mysteriously in police custody. The theory held that Giwa had discovered she was actually alive and living in London, and that she was connected to people very close to Babangada's inner circle, possibly including his wife, Mariam. The story goes that Giwa had traveled to London and interviewed her, or attempted to, and that photographs existed linking her to senior government figures. However, in a 2025 memoir, Yakubu Muhammad, one of Newswatch's own founding editors, declared that the Gloria Okan theory was largely a hoax that distracted from the actual investigation and was used by people with their own agendas to muddy the waters. Muhammad wrote that Giwa's trip to London was a business trip to inspect a printing press, not an undercover operation. He argues the obsession with Okan prevented investigators from examining the far more direct evidence that already existed. So where does that leave us? 3 theories, one documented chain of official government contacts in the 48 hours before the killing, one man who refused to testify before a human rights panel and only broke his silence in a memoir 39 years later, one alleged courier who has never been formally questioned, and a woman whose story may have been constructed to protect other people. What we know with certainty is this: Dele Giwa was killed by a sophisticated parcel bomb, delivered using the visual authority of the Nigerian presidency, 2 days after being interrogated by state security. The people named by the only formal investigative body to examine the case have never been prosecuted, and a court in 2024 agreed that this needs to change.
Here is what I keep coming back to every time I go through this file. Dele Giwa was not killed in secret. He was not disappeared in the night. He was not shot in an alleyway. He was killed with a bomb that carried the seal of the Nigerian presidency, delivered to his front gate on a Sunday morning while he sat at the breakfast table with a colleague. Whoever sent that bomb was not trying to hide what they were doing. They were making a statement. They were saying, "We can reach anyone. We will not be stopped, and we will not be held accountable." That statement has proven correct. 39 years have passed. The journalists who co-founded Newswatch with Dele, Ray Ekpu, Dan Egbasi, Yakubu Muhammad, are still alive. His family is still alive, still waiting. His brother Tunde once told a reporter, and these words have stayed with me, "We are at a loss. For 34 years, nothing has been done to find his killers. I am just waiting for death to come and take me too." That interview was published in 2020. His brother Tunde has since died, still without seeing justice. The magazine Dele built, Newswatch, survived him by 26 years, publishing until 2012. The journalism he modeled inspired generations of Nigerian reporters who continued pushing for accountability under governments that did not welcome it. The questions he was asking about corruption, about military overreach, about who really holds power in Nigeria, those questions are still being asked today. His most famous quote lives on in Nigerian public life, repeated every time the country faces a new crisis and the citizens are insufficiently alarmed. Nigeria is on fire and the citizens are amused. In 2024, a court said this case must be reopened. That is the latest development in a nearly 4-decade story of silence. We do not know yet what that reinvestigation will find or whether it will be pursued with the seriousness it deserves. What we do know is that the evidence that already exists is not nothing. The Oputa panel named names. The timeline is documented. The question of who built that bomb, who gave the order, and who put it in the hands of an unknown courier and sent it to a man's front gate, that question has an answer somewhere. It has always had an answer. For the Evidence Room community, I want your verdict. Drop your theory in the comments below. We will pin the most detailed one. And we will be back next week with another file from the West Africa Archive, because this continent has stories that the rest of the world is not telling.
We are telling them. This is the West Africa Files. The case stays open.